Hey everyone, welcome to the stream. I'm going to start in about 1 minute. So hang in there and thanks for joining. Thing. There we go. Turn the audio on. Good start. Welcome to the Twitch stream. This is from the Wacom Experience Center. If you've ever been to the Wacom Experience Center, then you may have run into me. I am a creative specialist there. I help people out with products, run events, and since we can't have any events, this is kind of our solution is to bring creative stuff into everyone's homes. Today I'm gonna be doing some Photoshop stuff, just kind of going over my process and what I like to do in Photoshop. It's gonna be very illustration heavy. I might talk about some photography stuff, but mostly this is gonna be illustration. Um, so yeah, maybe we should just jump right into it. I am using Wacom tools. I'm going to be on the Cintiq 24 with the Wacom Pro engine, and so if anyone has any questions about that, just hit them up in the chat. So thanks for joining, everybody, and I'm going to dive into it. Great. So when I start drawing, and I always have to come up with a new canvas. And what I usually do is, well, first off, the first thing I do is always create a new layer. That's something everyone should get in the habit of, because drawing on the background is not good, because if when you go to erase, it creates this nonsense and no one likes that. Um, just a few handy shortcuts that I have for myself set up on my pen. Um, so the bottom button is my right click, but the back button is actually undo, so I can undo super quickly. So you'll probably see me do that a lot today. Um, but yeah, always create a new layer right off the bat. What I like to do is when I create a new composition, it's 2000 by 2000 pixels. This is about 6.5 inches by 6.5 inches. So if I need to print this, I probably could. If I need to bring this into Adobe After Effects and animate it, it would be super easy to compress it down to something like 1920 by 1080. Also, it's good for social media stuff like Instagram or Twitter if you want to post photos or anything like that. So it's just like a good, it's not too big, it's not too small, it's kind of like a happy medium canvas size. Um, and here's that eraser. Right on. So today I'm mostly just going to be using the brush tool. Um, there are like an infinite number of tools over here on the side, but I don't use most of them when I'm doing illustration. Um, so we're mostly going to go over that today. I wanted to go over like some brushes I like to use and kind of go over why I like to use them and how they kind of influence my style. Um, so just a little paint bucket tool right here. Yeah. So we have this like green circle right here, and I'm just gonna go over a few brushes that I like to use, and that I've created. I've created some of them. Some of them I've stolen from the Kyle Webster series or modified the Kyle Webster series to kind of like fit my style and what I like to do. So oh, we're getting some help in the chat. I just realized. I have a couple moderators, I should say. So I should just want to give a shout out to Megan and Carter, who are also part of the Experience Center team. They're helping out doing some moderating today and making sure everything is going well behind the curtains. Yeah, so let's see. I don't know if this is like a problem for anyone else, but I always get these two tabs mixed up. So first off, there's like all these like general brushes, which are really great. I use this soft round opacity quite a bit. Whenever I want to do shading or anything like that, this is like a super handy feature. And when I was learning illustration and figured this out, it kind of blew my mind. It's just this little checkered box, and which locks a layer. And so now when I draw, I can only affect what's inside, like something I've already drawn. I don't know. I'm sure most people who are watching this, if you're interested in illustration, know about this. But like, I've known about this for a while, but it's still like, I don't know, blows my mind. So the soft brush is super nice. You get some like really great gradients. If you want to start making like some three-dimensional form, sometimes I'll add a little bit of like blue to shadows and a little bit of warmth to my highlights. Bam, now we have like this great sphere. Another way I like to show three-dimensional form with other brushes is this texture brush right here, which I found so I should just say there are so many, hundreds if not thousands of Kyle Webster brushes, and it can be kind of like overwhelming at times, but I like to like find some brushes that mimic real world materials that I like to use, like pencils and charcoal and ink, and go there and just start making a bunch of marks and seeing what I like to use. But I found he had Kyle Webster made some brushes in like an FX that are supposed to make just special effects. And this was aquatint. And I just really liked the texture that it made. So I've actually been using this a lot in a lot of my illustrations, and so it's a little bit much. So if I just wanted to create some like simple three-dimensional form, but have it be super rough, it makes things a little bit flat, but also suggests three-dimensional form, which I kind of like. So it's kind of like a happy medium, and it gives like a nice texture to things. Texture is just like, it's all the rage right now. Everyone's adding textures to their illustrations. I think it's super trendy. Yeah, and that's kind of like how I've been doing three-dimensional form lately. I have this like, I call this this is just a regular hard round pressure opacity brush, but this is how I like to do a lot of my coloring because it's just super fast. makes things flat. I can like make a do-over real easy. Some other brushes I like to use. I got from the Kyle Webster series, like the manga stuff. He has like a manga pack. So if you're like into this sort of stuff, and you're like doing like anime, manga, these brushes might be helpful for you. So these are horizontal lines, obviously. I'm just gonna undo that really quick. Got the vertical line pack, and some nice like cross hatching right there. Just another way to like add texture to your piece. I think these can be overdone really easily, and you don't. I think a little goes a long way. But I've seen some like super cool stuff that people make with these brushes, and there's also like horizontals. I really like these diagonal ones because you can find some that go left, some that go right, and how you want your lights, where your light source, it kind of makes sense. And they're also pressure sensitive, which is really nice. So like the lighter I press, they get like scratchy, which is a really cool effect. You can also change the color of them. They don't have to be black. So you get some like nice, it's kind of weird, but you know, it might work for something. I probably wouldn't do that. Yeah. I really like these cross hatching. Something else I use quite a bit, I'm just going to add a new layer, this is just a normal pencil. And this is what I use for like a lot of my sketching. And so I'm probably going to use this for like 70% of what I do today. Just a normal, it's supposed to mimic like an HB pencil. And I think like we all grew up with those, so it's like really easy to make stuff with that. It feels really natural. Let's see, is there any other brushes? There's this Sumi ink brush that I really enjoy using as well, and I might use some of that today. Just super streaky. What I'm gonna do today is some like graphic. I like my style right now is like very cartoony meets like graphic novel, and so I'm gonna draw some cartoons, but give them like a heavy black outline, like you would see in a comic book, and maybe use some of this cross hatching stuff. I'm not sure. Another brush that I like to use sometimes, not all the time, which I don't even have it saved. I've made a collection. As you can see right here, it says Diego's collection. That's my stuff that I've kind of started collecting over the past year. But there is a lot. If you're just starting out, I might suggest just downloading the Mega Pack by Kyle Webster. There's so much stuff in here, just within the drawing box alone. I'm going to go down to the real oils, though, and pull this out. And I haven't really gotten too deep into these brushes. Honestly, I like this first three in the top row. I'm not much of an oil painter, and if you are into oil painting, I really suggest checking these out. I'm gonna show you how to save this brush, because I am gonna save it. So I'm gonna go back up to my collection here and just add this brush. I'm not gonna call it chalk, I'm gonna call it oil painting brush. So if you notice over here, like there are brushes, and then there's something called the mixer brush. The mixer brush is really interesting because it will take the colors that you already have down and mix it with the color that you've chosen. And there's like lots of, I'm not going to get into this too heavy because I'm not really going to use this brush today, but I just wanted to show people what's out there, and I want to show people how I use this sometimes. But there's different ways you can make it so you dry your brush every time and keep adding color to it every time. You can make your brush wetter or drier. You can add more paint to it or mix it into the canvas more. You can really manipulate this brush to do a lot of different things, and it gives you a lot of control. So this is definitely something to play around with if you are like a traditional artist by trade and you want to start working digital. I highly recommend checking out these brushes. There's so many different ways you can manipulate them. Yeah, they're also just really fun. Yeah, and they work super fast. One way I really like to use these brushes is when I'm drawing on top of my photographs. And so I just want to show this one. This is a piece I made with the mixer brush and that brush that I was just showing you. So these sharks were obviously not flying around in the forest. I painted them on with the mixer brush, and if you look closely, they do get super streaky, and you can get some like really nice like painterly effects in them. And with this one, I did this one about a year ago, but I can tell I also added a noise filter on top of it to hopefully I think I was going to try to match the noise that was already in the photo. But when you add noise, it softens things up and it kind of dilutes that painterly effect a little bit. But that's one way I like to use the mixer brush. I like the mixer brush on top of my photographs. I think that works for me. Obviously, there's a million different ways that you can use them. Another brush that I like to use is a brush I created, but it's super simple. All I did was take the soft round pressure opacity brush that was the first one I used, but I set the mode to dissolve. I'm going to create a new circle just so we can see what I'm doing. Thank you, Megan, for the chat. Much appreciated. Yeah, so I'm going to go back to that dissolve brush, and I'm going to show you how I like to use it. So all it does is creates this like splatter effect. If anyone grew up with like MS Paint, this really reminds me of the spray can in MS Paint. It just creates this like these lovely little pixelated dots. I think it's pretty great for creating like really quick texture. It creates like this movement in your pieces that is just a little bit different than just like a gradient. I think it's a little bit more interesting. And I'll show you a finished piece that I did using this technique. So all of these, this is more of more flat than I typically like to do, but this whole piece was done with that flat dissolve brush. This hot dog and the rat are my favorite thing on this. Red Bull inspired. This banana rat also has some of that dissolve brush in it. The banana has that gradient yellow using the dissolve brush. So super easy brush to make, and I like to have this little shortcut right here, just so I can keep going back to it. I also made the dissolve brush, that same brush, but I also put the size on opacity. Let's make a darker color so you can see that. So like the lighter I press, it will have a really small stream, but if I press harder, I can cover more area. So that's good for like some detail work. If you have like some really small details that you want to make. Yeah. Is there another one I want to show you? Yeah, so this dragon rat, that one was made with that aqua tint brush. So this brush right here, just adding some texture to things. Obviously this isn't working because I'm just drawing on top of what I'm doing, but you kind of see the texture effect that I'm getting. Using that undo shortcut. Yeah. Same thing with this guy. Using the aqua tint brush that I found in the Kyle Webster FX series. He has so many different texture brushes. I really recommend checking out like his dry media brushes, his like chalk pastels, if you want to add textures to your illustrations. I think they're super handy and really fun to start manipulating. If people are into how to make brushes, that could be like another lesson for another day, because if you want to try to make anything that simulates anything in real life, there's probably a way to make a brush out of it. I've made from sketching to making stamps to making like clouds to fog, like anything that you want to like create in Photoshop. And that's kind of why I like Photoshop, is that it can literally like do anything. It does a lot of things really well, from animation. It's not as robust as like After Effects or something like that, but you can still create a lot of things in Photoshop. And it's kind of like the possibilities are kind of endless, and that's why I like this program so much. Okay, it's a lot of talking. Maybe I should start drawing. Miss Mary Diego just entered the chat and gave a really nice rainbow heart. That's lovely. Thank you for that. Cool. So yeah, there's a couple pencils that I like to use in here. The hard pencil, which is probably good to start with, but I'm just gonna go straight with this HB pencil. I'm gonna delete this layer. It's always good to name your layers. I'm okay at naming layers. If I'm doing like a really big project, I make sure to name all my layers, but if I'm just doing like a sketch or something like that, then I don't. Okay, so we'll just call this one sketch. I am going to attempt to draw a turtle. And let me see here. instead of like going just straight black, a lot of times I like to do blue, or even for the sketch, like a lighter blue. Right. So I like to go like Vin Diesel mode and just go like Fast and Furious. A lot of people will say like in this phase, don't worry about erasing. I'm like, whatever about that. I erase all the time. What I really like about like digital drawing, Katie's got a question. Ked Whitney has a question. Do you prefer to name layers in correlation to the tool you're using, or do you get creative? Um, Sometimes my naming structure doesn't make any sense. Like if you went into one of my Photoshop files and you saw the naming structure, like this doesn't make a lick of sense, but it makes sense to me, and that's all that matters. Like maybe if I go back to like a drawing I did like a year ago and opened up that file and I started reading the layers, I'd be like, past Christopher was a dummy. But it just matters mostly for when you're in the moment creating something. But I typically don't name my layers based off of the tool I'm using. Yeah, probably not. Good question though. This turtle is very serious. Let's give him a smile. So it's good to be like as loose as you can. I'm gonna move the microphone for a second. As loose as you can in this phase. Oftentimes when you're like super loose, you start making lines that you normally wouldn't, and then you start seeing your drawing in like a different way, which is pretty cool. It's always good to like block out the shapes that you want to use right off the bat. Kind of gives you a good sense of where things are going to be placed. I think his arm is going to come up over here. I saw that Gray entered the stream a little while ago. I missed that. What's up, Gray? I think the vibe I'm going with this turtle is like, I don't know if anyone remembers Franklin the turtle. But like Franklin the turtle, if he was like born in the trailer park. When I'm drawing, like, I'm not sure how many people enjoy drawing hands. Let's be real. But when I'm drawing hands, like right at the beginning, there are people who enjoy drawing hands. Good for those people. But when I'm drawing hands, like right at the beginning, I like to draw mittens. So I like to pretend that they're wearing mittens. And then I'll add the details later. This turtle's got a little bit of a belly here. Let's bring his shell out a little bit wider. I'm glad I could join you for lunch, Gray. What's for lunch? Big salad with chicken. No, why would a turtle like chicken? So this is a point where I've definitely gotten like a lot of my details down. Like started to figure out this drawing. I want his cheeks to come out a little bit more, make him a little bit more expressive. Right now he's kind of mean looking. I don't want that. Let's change that up. That's better. It's funny how like one little curve can like really change the attitude. Gonna kind of give him some details in the shell here. Is my camera shaking? I'm sorry about that if it is. I'm getting a little excited with the pen here. So if anyone is out there in the chat, some questions for you guys is like, what are you doing to stay creative in these times? I've kind of tried to pick up a couple new hobbies as I've been in quarantine. My coworker Carter, if he's listening out there, him and I have been going through some After Effects tutorials, and I think we're actually going to set up a stream where Carter is actually going to draw and then bring his drawing into After Effects and animate it. And I think that is something I'm super interested in, and maybe one of my videos in the future will be one of those. But yeah, we've been going through some After Effects stuff. KED Whitney is crocheting. That's great. It is great. Yeah, great. You should definitely join us with the After Effects tutorials. We haven't gotten, or I haven't gotten very far. So uh, would love to see some of the stuff that you make. I made an abomination of an animation yesterday, and I will definitely share it with you, Gray. 1805. That's sounds awesome. So something I'm gonna do right now, which is, one of those perks of working digital. I have this like lasso tool right now, and I'm going to select his hand right here because I think it's a little bit too far out, and I'm just gonna move it over. And since we're still in this like sketching phase, it doesn't really matter. What's like cool about this is like you can make selections like this. Say if like his head was, I thought, too big, I could, you know, but that's awful. No one wants that. But super cool way you can just start manipulating your initial sketches and kind of correct things that you've done. Turtle hands. What did turtle hands even look like? I know I'm like, they got claws. This guy's not gonna have claws. Yeah, great. I don't know what you're doing. You're on your own though. This hand is awful. That's a little better. Hide that pinky. I was watching this tutorial on this guy and how he tries to simplify hands, and he just came up with this phrase called "when in doubty, one finger outie." And so if you draw three fingers together and one finger kind of by itself, with the exception of the thumb, who cares about thumbs? It will simplify your hand, so it's not. It makes it look a little bit more natural, and it kind of makes it easier to draw. And ever since I saw that video, every time I draw hands, I can't not say "when in doubty, one finger outie." It's what I live by now. I realized I only drew three fingers on this top one. Let's give him like a proper 5 fingers. This isn't Disney. When in doubty, one finger. Outie. That's a good one too, although the pinkies on this one are not out. Okay, so I've kind of come to a point in this illustration, I've probably overdone it, where I'm done my sketch, and if this was traditional media, I would say this is where I would start to do my inking. And I have a couple brushes that I like to use for that. See, I did it again. Not that one. So this is a brush that I found in the manga pack. Not the mega pack, but the manga pack that I like to use. And I've also manipulated it a bit to add some smoothing to it. So I'm just going to show you what this one looks like really quick. I'm going to use a darker color. So it's got some texture to the sides of it, and I like the way that it tapers off, and the smaller I get, the kind of like scratchier it is. So it almost acts as like a fountain pen, or maybe like a little bit of like a dried up ballpoint pen, which I like. There's also another pen. There's the Sumi ink one that we saw earlier, which I could do my outlining in. This is like super scratchy when you get small, and like the bigger that you make the brush, the like deeper the blacks you can get. I'm not going to use that one for this one. I'm probably going to use this manga one. There's also this one, which is the rough one. It's pretty similar to the one I was showing you before. Yeah, we're gonna use this one. So now what I can do, since this is just my sketch, I can lower the opacity of this layer, which is really nice. And I'm going to add a new layer. And I'm going to call this one line work, because naming layers, it's a good thing to do. Keeps you organized. And now I'm going to start doing my line work. I'm going to try to go through this. I can get kind of hung up in this phase for a while, so I will try my best to move as quickly as possible. Looks like we got a new person in the chat. Welcome. Tomicide? Tom? I use the brackets on the keyboard a lot to change the thickness of the pen. So if I have like I try to keep like a consistency when I'm doing the line work, not going from like thick to thin too often, but if there's like a big area that I need to shade in, then I'll just use the brackets on the keyboard. Make little indentations here in the shell, give it a little bit more character. I think when I was thinking of this character, I was looking at the tortoise from Kung Fu Panda, and if you look at his shell, it's like super intricate and it almost looks like tree bark. I think his design was super cool. I think he's like the coolest designed character out of that series, except for maybe the panda. The panda was pretty cool. Poe. So this part can be a little bit, it's a lot slower than the sketching phase. So I think like in like the cadence of my drawing, I try to be as fast as possible at the beginning. And then as I get towards the end of my drawing, I slow down quite a bit. Hey, Abby's in the chat. Thanks for the appropriate emojis. Always a fan of a well-placed emoji. Or GIF. Can you do GIFs in the chat? Anyone know? I'm actually pretty new to Twitch. Especially for artists. But there are a lot of like super talented artists on here, and you can just like hop on and watch them draw, which I think is like super, super cool. It says my face is cut in half. I'm gonna switch over to OBS. How's that, Gray? It's good until I start drawing. I'll move that thumb back. I'm actually gonna move this hand again. So what are some people doing in this quarantine? Any shows people are watching? I just saw that Disney is releasing like a bunch of stuff. I haven't seen their new movie Onward, which I think I'm actually gonna try to watch tonight. I'm a sucker for Pixar. I'm actually really excited for their next one. Onward seems fun, but it's probably not going to be my favorite one. Okay, I'm going to work on his face now. Give him a little highlight. Well, that's not good. A lot of the times I can't get the right angle when I'm inking, and I end up just like straining my body in like really awkward ways. But you know, Photoshop has an intelligent workaround to that, and you can just rotate the canvas. Imagine that. Posture is always important as well, and something I am guilty of being really bad at. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has checked out a PlayStation game called Dreams, but Sky Mall Rats just brought it up. If you are a creative and you have a PlayStation 4, I highly recommend you check out the game Dreams. Seems like if you're an illustrator, a 3D modeler, basically anything creative, you can make some really rad stuff in that game. It's like a game for creative people. Cool. Alright, I'm coming up on the end of this phase. I am going to add some details. I'll give them a little defined thought bubble too. Trying to build a website. What platform are you using to build a website? I use Squarespace, which is super handy. Makes things pretty easy. Right now I'm adding some shadows to this drawing. Give it a little bit more depth. I kind of have to figure out which way my light source is coming from. I like to try to figure that out in this phase. And so since he's kind of facing the right, I'm going to pretend like my light is coming from this direction. And so that's when I also try to figure out where my shadows would be. And so like now everything that's on the left of him, and like try to think about where the shadows would fall. So there'd be like a line under the brim of his hat, under his cheek here, and where his cheek, how his cheek is above his neck here. So just trying to figure out where those shadows would be. Probably behind his shell right here. And a lot of times I end up drawing over the details I've created. But it's like whatever. I think adding the definition in the drawing is more important. I think these dark blacks are going to add a lot. this is a time where I would make my brush a bit bigger too. WordPress. Never used WordPress before, but I feel like I've seen someone use WordPress, and I almost feel like you can manipulate things more than you can in Squarespace. Squarespace has like some really cool templates, but I get kind of frustrated sometimes when I can't manipulate the templates the way that I want to. So WordPress seems like it can go a little bit further. If anyone is into animation and wants some animation inspiration, I just started watching the series Undone on Amazon Prime, and it is super cool. I think I'm not an animation expert by any means, but the effect that they're using in that is called rotoscoping, where they actually have real actors acting things out, but then they draw on top of them to make them appear animated. It's pretty cool stuff. The only other movie I've seen done like this was A Scanner Darkly with Keanu Reeves. Super cool movie. You should check that one out too. Okay, so I have a couple little details in here. Then I'm going to be done with this phase, and I'm going to move on to the next, which is coloring, which is super exciting. A lot of times I like to leave. I can now turn that layer off if I wanted to. A lot of times I leave it on just because I like the dynamic look of it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to put it underneath my line work. If you see over here in the layers panel, that's because this layer is underneath. I'm going to change my brush to a coloring brush. Now I can color as quickly as I want to, but I get to keep that line work in there. I'm going to change the color too, like these light greens. And just like before in the initial sketching phase, I'm going to go as fast as I can during the initial coloring phase. And I'm not going to worry about staying in the lines. I think I would drive myself crazy at this point doing that. And that's something I do at the end actually, is clean up the lines. Cool. I like to pick a color right off the bat where I know I'm going to add like probably 4 or 5 colors to this, and this green is going to be the green of the turtle. Mark Diego chiming in the chat. That was like 45 minutes ago. Yeah. So at this point, I also like to pick my color palette, and I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to name it color palette. And while I'm here, I'm going to name this layer too, because I forgot to do that. I'm going to call it turtle base layer. And I'm going to pick my color palette. No. One more yellow. So I think his shell will be this color. His hat will be a nice purple. Thinking for the brim of his shell, it should be like a almost like a brown. Yeah, something in there. I might add more later, but that'll be good for now. I like having the colors just like out and ready to use. If I'm in my brush tool and I hold down Alt, it gives me a little color picker, so I can like quickly switch colors. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer, and holding down Alt, I'm going to go over to the layers panel and click in between these two layers, and this layer I will call hat. And so what that does is creates a clipping mask, and so now when I draw, I can only draw within the layer below it. That makes things super easy. I'm going to create another layer, hold down Alt, click in between those two layers, and add this brown. I'm being a little bit more careful now. Like, I don't want to be drawing here, although it is really easy to fix that. Pick that yellow. Whoops. So this is like classic mistake working on the wrong layer. Yeah, add new layer. Call it yellow shell. I'm gonna name that last one brown shell. So there is a little shortcut that I'm going to show you here. This works really well if you close your line work, and I'm just checking this over. So I'm going to go up to my line work layer, and I'm going to hit keyboard shortcut W. This brings up the magic wand tool. I'm going to click in here. Oh, it didn't work. It means I didn't close off one of these lines. Oh, it's right there. Gonna try that again. Okay, line work. Aha! So now I've made a selection of that shell, and I'm gonna go back down to my yellow shell layer, and I'm gonna get my paint bucket tool, and just like with the brush, if I hold down Alt, it brings up the color picker. I'm gonna pick yellow. Bam. Super fast and easy. That only works and you kind of have to be like mindful of this, like as you're doing your line work, is to close off your lines. I didn't think about the color of his shell. Should that also be yellow? Guess it can be. Turtle shells are they're like green and yellow, right? Maybe I can add some green to it later. Just going over that brown. Looks like I missed a few spots. Add a new layer. Call this white, because he needs some white eyes. Actually, I might make them a little yellow with white in them. Cool. All right, we got a colored turtle here. I'm gonna fix this. So now the next step is adding that texture, kind of like at the beginning of this stream, I was showing some texture brushes. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go back down to the base, turtle base layer. I'm going to lock it. I'm going to get a new brush. I'm going to get that texture brush that I found in the Kyle Webster FX box. I'll make it a little bigger. I'm going to color pick the green that I already used, and then all I'm going to do is add a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. I'm going to make it a little bit bluer. And so now I'm just doing some shading. This part can go like super quick because I've locked the layer, I'm only going to be affecting the areas that are green. I don't have to worry about going into that yellow or the purple. It's only going to be the green areas. Just makes it super fast. Thanks for stopping in. Now I'm going to color pick my original green again. I'm going to slide the green down a little bit so the green is a little bit warmer, and I'm going to pick a lighter tone of green. I don't really like that. It got a little bit grayer. I'm gonna add. I don't like that either, to be honest. There we go. Super subtle, but I think it adds a lot. So I'm just kind of coloring in where I might think the light might be hitting him. So things on top and to the right. That's kind of what's going through my head right now. Cool. I'm gonna go up to the hat, pick the purple. I'm gonna lock the layer, add a little bit of a darker purple. So I want this area right here to be a darker shade of purple. So I'm just gonna select it because the brush I'm using, I'm not very good at being precise. So if I make a selection, I can just do one little area. All right, I'm gonna add a lighter purple. We'll do this brown next. Lock the layer. Pick a darker color. I'm gonna go a little bit darker on this. Go back to that original brown, pick a lighter color. I think I'm actually going to add some yellow highlights to this at the end, but for now it's good. Go to the yellow shell, pick a darker yellow, make sure the layer is locked. I'm really good at forgetting to lock the layers. Probably make this whole shell, this back shell darker. A lighter yellow. Cool. All right, I'm gonna do some highlights. So I'm gonna add another layer, put it in the turtle base layer with the alt click. I'm just gonna call it highlights. I'm gonna pick a different brush. I'm gonna do this basic rough one, kind of like it's very similar to the one that we did our inking with. I'm gonna pick this green. I think it's easy to like overdo highlights, so I try to be as minimalist as possible, but sometimes I overdo it. Can make this more yellow. I try to use as few colors as possible in a piece, like probably no more than 5. A little bit of a highlight on the brim of his hat here. Cool. All right, we're coming up on the end of this one. What I'm going to do here is unlock this base layer and just go around and clean up the color. And because I made those clipping masks, if I delete the green, I can erase all of the colors at once. I'm gonna get rid of my color palette layer and get rid of my sketching layer at the bottom here. Missed a couple spots. I'm going to go right above my background layer. I'm going to add a new background. Well, that's not good. I'm just going to experiment with a couple different colors here. I think a blue might be nice. Fix some stuff I forgot. Adding a new background is also really great. A lot of times I don't sketch on white backgrounds. One, because it is better on your eyes. Actually, that's the main reason. It's better on your eyes. Cool. I'm going to go back up to my lasso tool over here. I'm going to pick that. I'm going to go down to that blue layer. I'm just going to draw in some grass. I'm going to add a bit of a darker blue. I'm going to go a little bit darker. You know what? Before I do that, I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to do that blue in a layer. I'm going to add another layer. Just really fast. Add a bit of a lighter blue. It's not my favorite thing, to be honest. Let me try this again. There we go. Color in the thought bubble. Just gonna be loose on this. And erase this. So we're just about done here. There are a couple more things that I like to do on this background layer. I'm gonna click the background layer. I'm gonna go up to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. And this is a super subtle effect and a good way to add some texture to your background. I'm going to make it monochromatic. And I'm going to, actually, that looks pretty good right there. You can experiment. Obviously, this looks terrible. But just so the background is a little bit noisy, I'm going to select those other blue layers and do the same thing. Apparently I can't do both at the same time. And I'm going to hit Filter, Add Noise. This top one right here will just add whatever filter you use last. So just for some consistency. I'm going to add one more layer, then probably call this piece done. I'm going to add a really dark blue on top of everything. And just so, I'm going to use a gradient brush right now. You can't see anything. And I'm going to use a layer mask. And I'm going to create a little vignette. That's too much of a vignette. I just want something really subtle. So you can see It almost kind of gives it like a nighttime effect, especially with that blue background. I almost think that vignette is still a little bit too strong. I want it super subtle. Cool. So, just want to say thanks for joining, everybody. If anyone saw anything that they liked, let us know. We can do more of this stuff in the future. We're looking to do some animation stuff, so be on the lookout for that. Just want to say thank you for watching. Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Really appreciate it. Tune in for more creative stuff, and check us out on social medias. We're on Twitter, Instagram, the Facebooks. Hit us up. Let us know how you're being creative. Let us know how we can share your stuff. Do the hashtags, Wacom Experience Center. And I'm coming. We're here in Portland, Oregon. And hopefully when things start settling down out there, we can see more of you in real life. So keep in touch and stay safe, everybody.